الحمد لله رب العالمين له الحمد الحسن والثناء الجميل وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Allah Ta'ala, I'd like to apologize for coming late. May Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala pardon our sins and forgive our shortcomings. Inshallah Ta'ala, we've got 1 hour or so until time for Salah. We're going to cover the virtues of Surah Al-Baqarah. The virtues of Surah Al-Baqarah. And we're going to cover these virtues from the ahadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And we're going to cover them more specifically from Sahih Muslim. From Sahih Muslim. And we're going to cover as many ahadith as we can from this chapter. However, by the likes of it, because I like to go into detail, we'll probably only cover one hadith. So Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala, he narrates in his kitab As-Salati wal-Musafirina wa Qasriha, in the chapter of the traveler prayer and shortening this traveler prayer. And more specifically, he mentions it in his bab فضل قراءة القرآن وسورة البقرة. The virtues of reciting the Quran, what are the rewards and the virtues of reciting the Quran, and more specifically, Surah Al-Baqarah. So Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala, he narrates this hadith and he says, حدثني الحسن بن علي الحلواني. He's narrating it from his sheikh. Imam Muslim is narrating from who? His own sheikh. His sheikh is called Muhammad ibn Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Hulwani. And he met this sheikh or this teacher in Mecca. It's from his mashayikh or his shuyukh al-Makkiyin. And then he narrates it from حدثنا أبو توبة وهو الربيع بن نافع. He narrated him from Abu Tawbah. And Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala, he gave you more detail. He narrated when he took the hadith from his sheikh, and forgive me, but we're going to go a bit detail into the explanation of the sanad, because it's one of the sunnah that is mahjur. A lot of the people, when they explain the hadith, they forget the sanad. From the way of teaching is to go through the sanad and then go to the matan. So we're going to go a bit into detail in the sanad, which means, what's the sanad? The chain of narration. A hadith has two parts, the matan and the sanad. The sanad is the chain of narration, the number of narrators, the people in the chain. Who heard it from who heard it from who heard it from who, until the Prophet ﷺ. And the matan is the wordings of the Prophet ﷺ. So going back to the chain. Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Hulwani, his teacher, Imam Muslim's teacher, he narrated from Abu Tawbah. And he says, وَهُوَ الرَّبِيعُ بْنُ نَافِعُ وَهُوَ الرَّبِيعُ بْنُ نَافِعُ. And he made it easy for you. Generally, when he narrated from his teacher, he said Abu Tawbah. That's it. But Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala gave you the extra detail. He said, وَهُوَ الرَّبِيعُ بْنُ نَافِعُ. He said, Abu Tawbah is Rabi' ibn Nafi'. Why? Because Abu Tawbah is a kunya. It's a kunya, it's a nickname. Like you say Abu Fulan, Fulan. Yeah? What's your nickname? What's your kunya? Abu Umar. Abu Umar. Good. But if I say Abu Umar, it could be one Abu Umar, could be a second Abu Umar, could be a third Abu Umar. You don't know who's the Abu Umar he's referring to. Because many people have similar kunyas. So if he says Abu Tawbah, could be 3 Abu Tawbahs. But Imam Muslim made it easy for you. He doesn't want you to work hard. And he says, وَهُوَ الرَّبِيعُ بْنُ نَافِعُ. Then he says, حدثنا معاوية. يعني Ibn Salam. He said, I'm narrating this. Again, Abu Tawbah narrates from Muawiyah. Muawiyah is who? Ibn Salam. And Muawiyah narrates from Zayd. And Muawiyah and Zayd are brothers. So 2 brothers are narrating from each other. Muawiyah is one brother, Zayd is another brother. They're narrating from each other. And then he says, أَنَّهُ سَمِعَ أَبَا سَلَّامَ, that he heard Aba Sallam, who is both of their grandfather. So a brother is narrating from another brother, is narrating from a grandfather. So 2 brothers, they're in the chain, plus their grandfather is also in the chain. And then he goes to the companion who is Abu Umamat al-Bahili. قال حدثنا أبو أمامة الباهلي, who was a companion. قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول اقرأوا القرآن. So this is to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. So Abu Umama and then the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said اقرأوا القرآن, reciting the Quran. But before we come into the method itself, just have a bit of stopping on the sanad. The narrators in this sanad are جلهم من رواة الشاميين. Majority of them are from Sham. And it's very hard or very unlikely to have a narrators that are from Sham and Imam Muslim bring it right after the chapter heading. It's not from Aada of Muslim rahimahullah. It's not from the habit of Muslim that he will mention a heading and right after it he will start with a hadith that has a lot of Shamiyin in it. It's not from his habit. However, they did it here, he's done it here. And the scholars differ as to why, but we're not going to go into detail. But most of the narrators in this chain are from where? Sham. Where's Sham? Where's Sham? No. No. It's the areas around Syria, it's not just Syria. It's Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan. These entire area is called Sham. It's not just Syria. A lot of people think it's just Syria. No. It's this entire region. So these scholars are all from this region. And Imam al-Tabri, he says, Ashraf al-Hadith, the most noble hadith for Ahlul Sham is the hadith of Al-Arbad ibn Sariyah, which is, إِنَّهُ مَنْ يَعِشْ مِنْكُمْ فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين عضوا عليها بالنواجذ. That hadith of the Prophet ﷺ from Al-Arbad ibn Sariyah is the most noble of the hadith of Ahlul Sham. So going back to the hadith or the ahadith that are in this chapter. So in this chapter that we mentioned, which is the virtues of reciting the Quran and Surah Al-Baqarah, Imam Muslim, he brings 3 ahadith. The first hadith we just mentioned, which is the hadith of Abu Umamah al-Bahili. The second hadith is the same as the first one, except it has a different chain of narration and a slightly different wording. The third hadith is the hadith of Al-Nawas ibn Sam'an. Al-Nawas ibn Sam'an. And I can see everybody's head falling down, getting bored, because we're talking about the sanad. When you go to the matan, everybody makes up. Khair, inshallah. So, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, اقرأوا القرآن, recite the Quran, read it. And the Prophet ﷺ means recite the Quran, not just recite it. And in another narration that's narrated in Al-Hakim, he said, تعلموا القرآن, learn the Quran. We need to not just recite the Quran, we need to learn it, memorize it, reflect upon it, understand it. We have to do these things to the Quran. Recite it, reflect upon it, memorize it, act upon it, and understand it. No. So you have to do these things. It's not just reciting the Quran. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, اقرأوا القرآن فإنه يأتي يوم القيامة شفيعا لأصحابه. Recite the Quran. Why? Because on the day of judgment, it's going to intercede for you in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's going to be a form of intercession, the Quran. And the Quran itself does not come. It's not that the Quran intercedes on your behalf, no. It's your recitation and your action and acting upon the Quran. Your action of reciting the Quran is what intercedes on your behalf. It's not the Quran. Because if we say the Quran is coming, that means the Quran is makhluq. But the Quran is غَيْرُ مَخْلُوقٍ. So the Quran is a few things. The Quran is what? Kalamullah, the speech of Allah. غَيْرُ مَخْلُوقٍ, it's not created. مِنْ جَمِيعِ جِهَادِهِ, from all angles and all different forms. What we recite is the Quran, it's uncreated. And what is in the Mus'haf is the Quran, it's uncreated. Every form of it is uncreated. As Imam Abi Hatim Abi Zur'at al-Razi, they mentioned in their kitab Aqidat al-Raziyayn. So the Quran is Kalam Allah غَيْرَ مَخْلُوقٍ. And your action of reciting the Quran is what's going to come and intercede. And in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he generally starts with, he says, اقرأوا القرآن, recite the Quran. Then he makes it more specific. He says, اقرأوا الزهراوين. Recite the Zahrawain, which are the two bright surahs. And he says, Surah Al-Baqarah wa Surah Al-Imran. So he starts with generalization to Prophet ﷺ. He says, read the whole Quran. Then he says, from the Quran, read Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran. Then he said, اقرأوا Al-Baqarah. Then he specifies it to only Al-Baqarah. So there's umum, and there's khusus, and there's khusus ba'd khusus. So there's umum, khusus, and then khusus ba'd umum. So it starts with a general, then a specific, and a specific of a specific. So he says, اقرأوا القرآن فإنه يأتي يوم القيامة شفيعا لأصحابه. It's going to be an intercession. How about a person who recites the Quran, however he sins? Will the Quran still intercede on his behalf? If he's a person of the Quran, he recites it a lot, but he has a lot of sins. Will the Quran still intercede? Huh?
You said you have to act on it.
Okay. If I say act everything, he does everything, but he's still sinning a lot.
Yeah, because every son of Adam is a sinner.
Nah. The scholars say that the Quran will still the Quran will still be an intercession for you despite your sins. It will actually take you to the level of those people who read the Quran and don't sin. It will intercede on your behalf, and he'll say, even though he sinned, but he was a person of the Quran. So it will intercede on your behalf. But the question that arises is, most people, they can say, look, I'm trying to learn the Quran, but I put all my effort in, but I'm unable to memorize. It's unfair that I will go down and somebody else whose memory is naturally good, he will go higher in front of the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do you respond to this?
Intention.
Isn't there a specific hadith on it where if you struggle to read the Quran,
Okay.
Allah wants you even more?
It's true. The scholars say that you do not get rewarded by how much you've memorized. It's not how much you've memorized, it's the effort that you've put into memorization. Whether you memorize or not, whether you're able to memorize one ayah, you spend 5 weeks and you just come up with one ayah, or you spend 1 week and you come up with half the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will reward you based on your effort that you put into the memorization. And that is what is going to be counted. It's not whether you memorize a lot, whether you do a lot, it's how much effort you put into the Quran. And the scholars say the way that the Quran will intercede on your behalf is in 2 ways. Number one, from the malaika that look at you. When you recite the Quran, the angels, they are witness to you reciting the Quran. That's one way the scholars say that the Quran will be a witness for you. The second way is, we know on the Day of Judgment there's some people that will be an intercession for other people. And the scholars say that in this case, Allah will make those people come to you and intercede for your behalf. So you might not know this person. You might not know this person on the Day of Judgment, but Allah still feels, because you read the Quran, Allah will make that person come and grab you and say, come with me in Jannah. So that is the second way. The first way is from the angle of the angels, and the second way is from the angle of other people coming and interceding for you, inshallah. Intercession is of types. So we said, إِنَّهُ يَأْتِي شَفِيعًا لِأَصْحَابِهِ. It will come as an intercession for its people. Intercede for what? The scholars say they will intercede for 3 things. Number 1, فِي رَفْعِ دَرَجَاتِ الْمُوحِدِينَ. To raise your level. So you're already in Jannah, but your levels in Jannah to be raised. We know Jannah is different levels. There's a low level, there's a high level, and the highest is Al-Firdaus. Maybe you're in a middle level. The first type of shafa'ah is your levels to be going up. So, for example, you're in the second level, for you to go in the third level. That's the type of intercession the Quran will do. The second type of intercession is في من استحق دخول النار من الموحدين أن لا يدخلها. For someone who deserves to go to the hellfire, for him to not go to the hellfire in the first place. So you deserve, with your actions, you deserve to go to the hellfire. You've had a lot of sins, and you have to go to the hellfire. But the intercession is before you actually go to the hellfire and you put into the hellfire, this intercession stops you from going to the hellfire. That's the second type of intercession. The third type of intercession is في من دخل النار من الموحدين بأن يخرج منها. For someone who's already in the hellfire. So you've entered the hellfire now, and the intercession is to remove you from the hellfire. So three types. One is to raise the ranks in Jannah. You're already in Jannah, to raise your ranks. Second one is you deserve to go to the hellfire, but before you go to the hellfire, you're removed from it. Third one is you're in the hellfire for you to be removed from it. Those three are the three types of intercession. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, اقرأوا الزهراوين. Recite the two bright ones. Az-Zahrawain is a word that is a muthanna. It's a muthanna, means it's a duo, it's a two things, or it refers to two. And it's a muthanna from the word Zahra, Zahra. And Zahra is a ta'neeth. It's a female version of Al-Azhar. Al-Azhar. And Al-Azhar means Mudi Shadid al-Daw. It's a light that is a very, very strong, bright light. So the Prophet ﷺ says, recite the two very, very, very bright lights. What are they? The Prophet ﷺ himself explained. He says, Al-Baqarah wa Surah Al-Imran. So he said two bright ones and he told you what they are. He said it's Al-Baqarah wa Surah Al-Imran. Does anyone notice anything specific in the way the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned the name of his surah, or these surahs? Anything specific? Al-Baqarah wa Surah Al-Imran. He called both surahs by name, but there's something specific in the way he did it. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now. I thought you said the answer. Nah, follow.
This is the order he mentioned it. So we just Surah Al-Baqarah first.
But that's nothing specific. That's nothing unique. Anything else? In the way he mentioned the name of the surah. What? No. It's normal. وآل عمران. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave you a qa'idah in the name of the way that you refer to surahs. He said Al-Baqarah. He didn't say Surah Al-Baqarah. He said Al-Baqarah wa Surah Al-Imran. And the scholars say there are three ways for you to refer to a name of the surah. Three ways. The first way is you say Surah Fulan. This surah. Surah Al-Baqarah. That's the first way. The second way is you say Al-Baqarah. Al-Fatiha. You just say the name without saying the word surah in front. That's the second way. And the third way the scholars mention is Surah الذي يذكر فيها البقرة. The surah that is in it the mentioning of the cow. Those are the three ways that you can refer to the name of the surah. You can say Al-Baqarah. You can say Surah Al-Baqarah. You can say Surah الذي يذكر فيها البقرة. Three things. Clear? And where do we get it from? The Prophet ﷺ, he used both. He said Al-Baqarah wa Surah Al-Imran. So the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us that you can do both ways. And the third way is لازم لفظه. It's from just the it's true from the essence of the first two. If you say Surah Al-Baqarah, means the surah that it contains the Baqarah. Clear? No.
Is there a reason why he said Baqarah by itself and Surah Al-Imran?
It's to teach us that you can say both ways. Yeah, that's the point. It is to teach us that you are allowed to say both ways. So why are they called Az-Zahrawain, the two bright ones? The scholars say لِكَثْرَةِ الْأَحْكَامِ الشَّرْعِيَّةِ الَّذِي فِيهَا, because they contain a lot of Islamic rulings. Surah Al-Baqarah itself, the scholars say فِيهِ أَلْفُ نَهْيٍ وَأَلْفُ أَمْرٍ وَأَلْفُ إِرْشَادٍ. It has 1,000 commands, it has 1,000 prohibitions, and it has 1,000 advices. Just Surah Al-Baqarah, the scholars say. And Surah Al-Imran also contains a lot of rulings. And the second reason is because there's a lot of names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that have been mentioned in these two surahs. Because of the names of Allah that are mentioned in these two surahs are a lot. And Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions in his Sharh of Sahih Muslim, سُمِّيَتْ زَهْرَوَيْنِ لِنُورِهِمَا وَهِدَايَتِهِمَا وَعِظَمِ أَجْرِهِمَا. They were named the two Zahrawain, the two bright ones, because they're nur. They have lots of light in it. And they have lots of guidance in it. And they have lots of reward in it. These two surahs have lots of three things. Light, lots of guidance, and lots of reward as well. That's why they were called the two bright ones. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Iqra'u Zahrawain." Then he said, فإنهما تأتيان يوم القيامة كأنهما غيايتان أو كأنهما غمامتان أو كأنهما غيايتان أو كأنهما فرقان من طير صواف. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, read the Quran first. And he said, why? There will be an intercession. Then he said, read these two surahs. Why? He gave you a reason. He said, these two surahs are going to come as a ghamamatan, two clouds. On the day of judgment, they're going to come as two clouds for you. Or, he said, they are going to come as two shades very close to your head. Ghayayatan. Or they're going to come as firqani min tayrin sawaf, two flock of birds in two different rows with their wings flapping. And they will protect you. And why would they come as a form of shade? Because we know on the day of judgment, the sun will be very close to us. Miqdara milin, just 1 mile. The scholars differ whether this 1 mile is what is 1 mile in our dunya today or it's a different 1 mile. Regardless of the opinions that you follow, it's going to be very close. It's going to be very hot. Some of us will be drenched in sweat up to our knees. Some of us not even drenched in sweat at all. And what's going to protect you on this very day? Surah Al-Baqarah. And Al-Imran, the Prophet ﷺ is saying. So he says, the first example he gave is كَأَنَّهُمَا غَمَامَتَانِ, like there are two clouds. And a cloud, my brothers and sisters, is very far from your head. That's the first example. A cloud is very far from your head. The second example the Prophet ﷺ he gave, كَأَنَّهُمَا غَيَايَتَانِ. And the Arabs, they say, تَغَايَ الْقَوْمُ رَأْسَ فُلَانٍ بِالسُّيُوفِ. When somebody, when in a battlefield, you're fighting, and there's one group of people, and there's a second group of people, and the first group of people, they attack the second group of people to the extent that the person's head, right above it, are swords. The swords are right above the person's head. تَغَايَ رَأْسَ فُلَانٍ is when they're almost about to hit him. So they're very close to his head. So they're just as they're about to hit them. So you're shaded to that extent. So right above your head, there is a shade. Right above your head. So the difference between the first example and the second example is, the first example is, the cloud is very far. The second example is, the cloud is, or not the cloud, the shade is very close to your head. And in the second example, you don't feel any heat at all, the scholars say. The difference is, the second time, you do not feel heat. No heat whatsoever. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he gave a third example, and he said, فِرْقَانِ مِنْ طَيْرٍ صَوَافٍ. Firqan, two groups. Min tayrin, of birds, sawaf, in rows. And in another narration, which is the second narration that we didn't cover in this lesson, is he said hisqani. Hisqan means their wings are flapping. So two birds, two rows full of birds, and they come and cover you. And this is the best of the three forms. The best of them. And really I reflected and really tried to think about it and look into the shuruh of this hadith to find out why. What's birds? Why is it a bird? What's the difference between this example and the first two examples? Then I found the answer in a hadith or a narration or a explanation that said the birds because yaqi wa yufrah. It not only protects you, but it makes you happy. It actually makes you happy that you have birds around you. It gives you company. It's unlike the first two examples. The first example is just a faraway cloud. Second example is slightly closer shade, but it's not something you can feel. It's not acting. There's no give or take. The third one is birds. They'll talk to you. They'll befriend you. They'll protect you, and you'll be happy. So you won't even feel. It's just like when you are with a friend on a journey in a car, and you're talking and you're talking and you're talking. You don't feel the distance. You travel 4 hours and you don't feel anything. And this is why it's birds, because they'll talk to you. They'll be friends with you, and they will protect you and allow time to pass. And they will not allow you to be scared. Instead, they'll make you happy. So that's the third example. And Imam al-Qurtubi mentions, he says, the ghamamatan, the first example, 2 clouds, is for one, لِمَنْ يَقْرَأْ وَيَتَعَلَّمْ وَلَمْ يَفْهَمُهُمَا, for someone who recites and he learns these 2 surahs, but he doesn't understand them. That person will get a cloud. Who gets a cloud? You read them, you learn them, but you don't understand it, so you don't know the meanings of it. You'll get something, faraway cloud, but that's it. Second thing is ghayaya. Ghayaya, liman jama'a al-amrayn, he combines between the two. Al-qira'a wal-fahm, the recitation and the understanding. So you understand it as well, you will get a very close shade. The third example is مَنْ ضَمَّ عَلَيْهِمَا تَعْلِيمَ الْمُسْتَعِدِينَ لِلتَّعْلِيمِ. The third one is when he actually adds a third element to it. Who will get the birds? A person who adds a third element, which is he will teach people who are ready to be taught. So you teach it to others. So ikhwan, you really truly, these 2 surahs at this point that we're speaking should become your life mission. It should become your life mission. If you want shade on the Day of Judgment, you should make it your life mission to read, understand, memorize, teach others these 2 surahs. Which ones? Al-Baqarah wa Al-Imran. And he says, in the last part of this, he says, تُحَاجَّانِ عَنْ صَاحِبِهِمَا. So the first example, he was shafa'a, it was intercession. This one, تُحَاجَّانِ, it will actually argue for you. تُحَاجَّانِ, it's not going to stand and just intercede, it's going to argue for you. It's going to say, Allah, allow him. Allah, forgive him. Allah, don't overcome, don't listen. Whatever he did, forget about it. Allah, it's okay. Let him go and he will keep arguing. These words will keep arguing for you. Not just a shafa'a, so it's ghayat shafa'a. It's the peak of intercession. That they will actually go a step beyond and argue for you as well.
Not only the birds.
That's the birds only. That's the birds only. Yes, that's the bird. تُحَاجَانِ عَنْ أَصْحَابِهِمَا. And the ashabi, the dhamir goes back to the person of the bird. Because in the Arabic language, the pronoun goes back to the closest element in the sentence. And the closest element in this sentence is the birds right before it. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he gave the final example. He said, اقرأوا البقرة. So he said, read the whole Quran, then read Al-Imran Al-Baqarah, and then he said, read Baqarah now. Forget about everything. اقرأوا البقرة فإن أخذها بركة وتركها حسرة ولا تستطيعها البطلة. He gave you 3 reasons why you should read Surah Al-Baqarah. He said, إن أخذها بركة. You've taken Surah Al-Baqarah on board. You're reciting it, acting upon it is a mean for barakah. You wanting barakah in your life, you want to get married, you want children, you want wife, you want everything, money, job, everything, stick to Surah Al-Baqarah. فَإِنَّ أَخْذَهَا بَرَكَةً. And then he says, وَتَرْكَهَا حَسْرًا. You leaving this surah off is regret. It's regretful. You will regret it in this dunya because you won't have barakah, and you regret it in the akhirah, you won't have the shade. No shade. Then he says, وَلَا تَسْتَطِيعُهَا الْبَطَلَةِ. The baqala, the sinners or evil deeds, or people who have corruption in their heart, they cannot overcome this surah. And this is from 2 angles, because in the hadith, He says, قال معاوية بلغني أن البطل السحرة. In the same hadith, he says, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he says, it has reached me that the batala, the evil, wicked people, are the magicians. Are the magicians. And the scholars say that it is true that it is magicians. Because they are from the most wicked of people. They are the most sinner and wicked of people. So they fall underneath, but it's not just limited to the magicians. And some scholars say that yes, it's just magicians. Some scholars say no, it's not just magician, it's any evil person. So even if you yourself have a bit of wickedness in your heart, you have sins, you will not be able to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. If you are short in your actions towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Surah Al-Baqarah will be very hard for you. So you judge yourselves, my brothers and sisters. If you are unable to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah, means you need to work hard. You need to clean your heart a bit more, inshallah ta'ala. Because we don't want to really leave it in the last minute, we're going to go through a few virtues of Surah Al-Baqarah specifically. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا تجعلوا بيوتكم مقابر. Do not make your houses as graveyards. إن الشيطان ينفر من البيت الذي تقرأ فيه سورة البقرة. The shaitan runs away from the house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited. And many people that have this question, what if I just listen to it or I play it in the house? No. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, يُقْرَأُ فِيهِ. It's recited in it. You are reciting it. He didn't say, يَسْتَمَعُ إِلَيْهَا. You are listening to it in your house. No, he said, you are reading it. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in a hadith as narrated by Ibn Hibban and Al-Hakim, he said, إِنَّ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَنَامًا. For everything there is a sanam. What's a sanam? Does anyone know what's a sanam? وَإِنَّ سَنَامَ الْقُرْآنِ سُورَةُ الْبَقَرَةِ. And the sanam of the Qur'an is Surah Al-Baqarah. That's a hint. Nope. What is sanam? The Prophet ﷺ said, everything has a sanam. And the sanam of the Qur'an is Surah Al-Baqarah. What is sanam? Protection. Yasin?
I was going to say protection as well.
No one's heard this word before. Sanam. Sanam al-Ibn. No? So sanam is the hump. When we say sanam al-Ibn, is the hump of the camel. It's the highest part of the camel. So the highest part of the Quran is, or the peak, or the most noble and the loftiest part of the Quran is Surah Al-Baqarah. And then he goes on to say, من قرأها في بيته ليلا لم يدخل الشيطان بيته 3 ليال. Whoever recites this Quran or this Surah Al-Baqarah in his house, the shaitan won't enter the house for 3 days. Also the Prophet ﷺ, he said, من قرأ بالآيتين من آخر سورة البقرة في ليلة كفاتا. Whoever recites the last 2 surahs of Surah Al-Baqarah, it will suffice him for the night. He will be protected, it suffices him, he doesn't have to worry, he doesn't have to be stressed. He is taken care of if he recites the last 2 surahs of Surah Al-Baqarah. And from the greatest virtues of Surah Al-Baqarah is, Ayatul Kursi is in this verse, in this surah. The ayah, the greatest verse in the Quran, which is Ayatul Kursi, it is in Surah Al-Baqarah. That's the greatest virtue. I conclude, inshallah ta'ala, by giving you some examples of the Salaf and how they were with the Quran generally. For us to take an example and raise our motivation. Abdullah ibn Wahb, he was Sahibu Malik, he was Imam Malik's friend. What do I mean by friend? Was he his actual friend? So when I say Sahibu Fulan, does it mean it's his actual friend? Generally, yes. But when we say Sahibu Malik or Sahibu Ahmad or Sahibu Shafi'i, we mean he is the student. Ashab means students. So the student of Imam Malik. Abdullah ibn Wahb, he says, كُنَّا نَعْجَبُ بِالنَّزْعِ مَالِكٍ لِلْقُرْآنِ. We used to be strange by Imam Malik's naz'a from the Quran. What is naz'a? his husnul istinbat, the way he would extract an ayah from the Quran and use it as an evidence. You would come to Imam Malik and say, Imam, what's the ruling of this? He will say, the Quran. He'll point towards the Quran and he'll recite it for you. And say, this ayah. And you think, how does this ayah have anything to do with my situation? If today you came to Imam Malik and you said, Imam, what's the ruling of Bitcoin? Wallah, he would bring you an ayah of the Quran and he will prove it to you. He was amazing with the Quran. And his students, they went to his sister after he passed away and they asked him, how was he with the Quran? How is he so good with the Quran? She said, إِنَّهُ إِذَا دَخَلَ الْبَيْتَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ شُغْلٌ إِلَّا الْقُرْآنِ. When Imam Malik, he came to the house and he entered the house, he had no other thing that concerned him, had nothing that busied him except the Quran. When he entered the house, nothing worried him or concerned him except the Quran. Imagine, brothers and sisters, when we enter the house, what do? Assalamu alaikum. Open the phone, news, speak, say what's up, what's up? Oh, alhamdulillah. Oh, do you get a bite, eat food, go shower, go change your clothes, sit, relax, talk. Imam Malik rahimahullah, his sister said he had nothing in the house he would come to do except recite the Quran. This was his thing. He would recite the Quran all day, every day. And if we really look into our lives and we see the amount of time that we spend, that we waste, really reflect upon it, we waste a lot of time. Remember Shaykh al-Mashur Hassan Hafidhullah Ta'ala is a student of Shaykh Al-Bani. He said, I heard him say in his video one time, when he was in Hajj just because of the time that he waited for people to come and gather. So he has a lecture, he's waiting for people to come and gather, he's opening and reading his Quran. He did this for 3-4 days, he finished the whole Quran. And I remember Shaykh Abdul Karim al-Khudair Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he said, there was a student once, he memorized the whole of Riyadh al-Salihin, the whole of it, between the Iqamah and the Adhan. From the Iqamah and the Adhan. How many minutes is that? 15 minutes? In that 15 minutes, over a period, I don't remember, Allahu Alam, I cannot recall. I think, if I'm not mistaken, could have been 8 years. In 8 years, he finished the whole Riyadh al-Salihin memorized it. 15 minutes a day. So we have to really look into our time. Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, rahimahullah ta'ala, he had a zawiyatun iswaddat. He had a corner, it became black and dark. He used to sit in a corner and recite the Quran, and because of his sitting in that corner got pressed down and became black. And he used to recite Quran in that corner. And when he was about to die, his sister came and she wanted to remove that corner. So he started to cry. He started to cry when she wanted to remove the corner. And he said, لَقَدْ خَتَمْتُ الْقُرْآنَ فِي هَذِهِ الزَّاوِيَةِ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ 5,000 مَرَّةٍ. I finished the Quran in this corner more than 5,000 times. And he started crying. And it became black because of a lot of sitting on that corner. So, Ikhwani Fillah, really we need to reflect into our situation and really go back to the Quran. And more specifically these two surahs, which is Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Imran. Inshallah ta'ala, any good that I've said is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Anything evil is from me and shaitan. Subhanahu wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Assalamu alaikum, guys. We believe that everyone should have access to the obligatory things that they need to know, the obligatory knowledge that they need to know in order to be a Muslim and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to at least a basic level. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking knowledge is obligatory upon every single Muslim. In other words, it means if you're not seeking that obligatory knowledge that you need, that minimum knowledge that you need, then you and I could actually be sinning. In fact, we would be sinners by not seeking that knowledge. But alhamdulillah, in order to solve that problem, we put together something called the Knowledge College. The Knowledge College is an online Islamic studies institute where we teach you how to study your religion. Brothers and sisters, you can start studying it right now by going to the link below, checking out the website, and hopefully if you like what you see, you can register inshallah ta'ala and start your pursuit of seeking knowledge. We start on a basic level and then alhamdulillah we work our way up to the top. Let's do that together inshallah. Check out the link below, Knowledge College. See you there. Assalamu alaikum.